Hi, this is Randy Randall of No Age and host of the podcast Hyphenate with Randy Randall. I want to welcome our newest sponsor of the show, DistroKid. DistroKid helps musicians get their music on all the major streaming platforms, and artists keep 100% of their royalties. Hyphenate listeners get 30% off at distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate. Again, that's distrokid.com/VIP/HYPHENATE. Go get your music streaming everywhere now.
Buzz Mackey and I went to Alcatraz. On the way back, out of the blue, he asked me if I'd be up for playing in the Melvins.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you so much for listening to Hyphenate with me, Randy Randall. I'm very excited to welcome my very good, dear old friend, Mr. David Scott Stone, on the program today. Thank you, Dave, for coming over in person and being a guest. It is one of the rare occasions, so I think a lot of these interviews end up happening via the interwebs, and when I'm fortunate enough to have somebody come over, I am always excited and also frightened in that my recording will turn out like crap, and I'm always so scared that I don't have the microphone set up right or something's going wrong. The internet site that we use to record a lot of these interviews is done very well, and as you'll hear in the interview, Dave Scott Stone has been doing recording, producing, engineering, and mixing at a very high level for a very long time. And I think I was intimidated to the point where I think his track sounds a little fuzzier than I'd like it to be. And maybe I'm just psyching myself out here, but I'm hearing more fuzz on his track than I would like, and I have no idea why that is. I've just spent the last hour trying to track it down, figure if it was sample rates, if it was this one, was that one. But I don't know. Maybe I'm also just nervous. I think, which also just goes to how long I've known Dave, but still am impressed, never ceased to be blown away by his skill and talent and his pedigree. I mean, the man has been in many of the most influential bands: the Melvins, Unwound, LCD Sound System, Get Hustle, Slug. I mean, he is quite a powerhouse and a creative tour de force. He's also an incredible producer, like I said, mixing engineer, and runs a great studio. So I am really grateful that he took the time to come over and be here. And I apologize, Dave, if your voice is not properly modulated, if it is not working the way it should. But nevertheless, I think we had a great conversation, and I'm excited to share that with everybody. I think we get into it in the interview, but I first met Dave, or I don't even know if I met him properly. I don't know when we would have been met or properly introduced, or I could say we met him, but I remember seeing him at the Smell. First time I went to the Smell in North Hollywood in the late 90s. He was very, iconic type of look, with the glasses and the parka and the hair and everything, and it looked very cool. And I remember thinking, myself as a high schooler at the time being like, whoa, I'm not cool enough to be here. There are people like Dave Stone. I didn't even know who he was at the time, but I knew he was cooler than I was, and still is. So, that was, going on some 25 years. That sounds about right. Somewhere, something like that. 25, 30, Jesus. Time just keeps rolling out on like a fucking steamroller. But anyway, Dave, thank you for coming over and talking about all your incredible musical projects that you have done. And really excited to share this conversation. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And find me on the interweb. No, not the interweb. I've already done that. No, find me on the Instagram at Randy S. Randall. And I'll give more shout outs for Dave on the other side of the interview. Mr. David Scott Stone, thank you for being here with me on the podcast.
Well, hi, Randy. How's it going? Good to see you. Your place looks fantastic. I remember when you were trying to build this studio out. It's pretty badass. It looks great.
Thanks. Yeah, you are one of the few who have come over in person. I think I've had Ray Barbie, I had Bjorn Copeland, and now I think you're the third. Everyone else is online only.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'd appreciate it, like
Yeah.
looking at all the gear and, we were both people that have played in bands for a number of years that got into like producing and engineering. And that is a complete other discipline to get into. And it takes years to kind of like,
I think guitar into production is a way of just saying we have a gear buying problem.
Well,
I think that's code for we have too many things.
I also did like a side a side road of synthesizers for a number of years too.
I'm so glad I avoided synthesizers and vintage cars.
Oh,
I think those are the things those will take stronger men than me down.
Well, that's the whole thing. Like,
Yeah.
like when I see these videos of people doing like synth studios, it's basically for millennials, the vintage car world, instead of buying, because Mustangs, what do you call it? Muscle cars, all of those things. Now they're just getting a bunch of Eurorack gear.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a similar kind of mindset. It's the tinkerer.
Yeah.
And I find myself, it's like, I love a good tinkering, but there's the creation. I was trying to always remember, like, there's got to be a reason for this. There's got to be something at the end of this, a product. If I'm just solely tinkering, then that's where I really find myself getting in trouble.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, like learning how to record well, engineer, learn how to use preamps, the differences between compressors, nerd talk here.
Yeah.
All of those things. I mean, in addition to, learning how to record things that provides a service. Like, I really feel like bands these days, I mean, we're in a different, like I started noticing things changing in the mid-aughts when like No Age was coming up. Like bands were getting smaller. It was the era of two-person bands. The music industry is falling apart, and you can't do a big band. It just didn't make any sense. And also because software was becoming more intuitive, plugins, you could learn how to record things. You no longer needed to go to recording school. You could get like, if you had a laptop, you could get some crack software, which to me feels pretty punk.
Yeah.
And start learning how to record. And now I feel like it's so important for at least someone in the band to know how to do that. Because, before if you had like, whether it was a Walkman or a DAT recorder or a field recorder, that's how you practice. That's how you would listen back to practice.
Yeah.
But now it's like, oh, wow, you can set up some mics. Like I imagine when you and Dean are here, like you can set up some mics and record these sorts of jams and then take it back, step away from the studio and start making considerations about how you want these new songs or these new ideas to form.
Yeah, having that little bit of space post when you're not in the middle of playing the thing to go back and then be the listener is so vital for any kind of project.
The consideration.
You have to become the audience at some point and go.
And I don't see any reason not to learn how to do that stuff. I mean, like, one thing I've subscribed to for a very, very long time is you can spend your free time like being entertained. Like you have your favorite TV show or, you have other sorts of hobbies, but, to get good at music and the people I've seen that got good at whether, not just music, any sort of artwork, any sort of pursuit that they have, it's that trade ultimately. It's like, do I want to get lost in something that entertains me, or do I want to take that time that I'm trading knowing about whatever current show is people are really into? Like someone was referencing that show Black Mirror.
Oh,
I had no idea what they were talking about because, I'm learning about, I'm practicing guitar or,
Well, it becomes like a craft in some sort of ways. I think there's the big creative sort of movements, and then there's just a lot of like business of making the thing, maintaining the equipment, and then also advancing your knowledge of the craft of whether it's songwriting or production, recording. Those are highly entertaining.
Yeah.
But it can also, it depends. That feeling of like, can I sit down and be passive, or do I need to be actively engaged? That kind of mind that goes out and wants more.
Yeah. I
Sorry to interrupt.
No,
but
no,
yeah.
no, 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 completely. It's also setting up systems for yourself. It's like in my studio, there's at least 3 different things I can do. If I don't feel like in the mood, or if I hit a wall with like trying to write something, I can always get into, learning a little bit more about the production. If I don't feel like writing, or if it's like nothing's sounding right, or I'm hating everything that I'm doing, I can get into like, okay, I'm going to figure out like a different signal chain for my 808 or my 909 or my guitar, or I can just like practice getting sounds. And if I don't feel like doing that, I can always get into like organizing my studio. It's like, oh, okay, I'm going to go through all these like files that I didn't like name at the time because I was writing.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get into better practice and more discipline with those sorts of things.
Data management. I feel like that's become my number one thing I do in any recording project or anything I start. It's like, okay, here's my folder hierarchy. And then just being really good about that. Because when you start out, I don't know how it is for you, but you never think of like, well, it's going to take 6 tries, and that idea is going to was going to meld with another idea, and so take one of this is going to you don't really know what it's going to be like till you start doing it. But after years of doing it, I try to anticipate those types of things. So I'll do a lot of dates, which is never fun. I love a good rough song name, or what do they call it? A name, like, oh, that's our working title. I love a working title. That's more fun, but a date will at least get me somewhere. And then just the versions of that. But I do it over and over and over again, because ultimately whatever you started out as, but what you thought the project was going to be when you start recording, by the time it's finished and you're exporting the thing, you're so far away from just the original idea or the project or the file that you started. It's become something else.
Well, in the last few years, I mean, maybe 4 or 5, like I've started going more with the gut. I don't have like destructive editing, if you,
right.
It's whatever feels right at that
You're
moment.
not a save as. I remember this when we worked together. You don't do a save as.
For a long time I was. And then going through that, it'd be so overwhelming that I couldn't finish anything.
Ooh, yeah.
But once I get an idea,
paralysis of choice. Yeah.
But once I started getting into like, oh wow, this feels right. I really, really like that. Maybe I take, instead of having 10 different choices, I try and narrow it down to a couple. Because,
it's more productive. Again, it's what works and what's getting you down to the finish line. Every step that's a step forward in a productive process is good. That's what works. That's what the whole idea is, to get to the finish line, right?
Yeah. And I remember James from LCD had this really, really good thing. He's like, your best, and I'm getting it completely wrong but it's better to have the best effort that you can do at the time exist, rather than your masterpiece exist in your head.
Oh my God, absolutely.
So it's just better, it's,
do what's in front of you. Take the next logical step of what's in front of you, rather than...
because I can completely overcook things. I did that for a number of years. I was completely paralyzed by trying to, really, really craft something into like this incredibly huge, masterful, but you've always got more songs in you.
Down and dirty, scrappy punk, wins the day a lot of times.
Yeah, you create something. Well, I mean, you create something, put it out in the universe, and let it go.
Yeah.
And then just make more stuff.
Yes.
Not trying to have so much importance. Like, you do the best job that you can.
Sure.
And over time, your work as you're making it gets better, and you start trusting your instincts a little bit more, in my experience.
Yeah.
And
whenever sorry to interrupt again, but I love any new project I start. If it's a new band or a new thing, whatever, if it's coming from me, from my creative thing, I want to fail at least 6 times as quickly as possible. I want to get all of those failures out of the way, and because I know they're going to happen.
Yeah.
So I can take 10 years to have 6 failures, or I can do it in like 6 weeks, whether it's playing 6 shows, writing 6 songs, just doing something somewhere about roughly 6 or something like that, of just like get all of the failures out of the way and have it as low stakes as possible, just to learn what's good about it. Cause you don't always know, like you're starting out, but rather making failure, like a anti against the idea of production, make it part of the production. Like, cool, let's get all of our failures out of the way. That way we can start getting to our successes of like what works. Because by finding out by what doesn't work, I don't know.
Well, I just played a show at our old stomping grounds, The Smell.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And I'd spent a little bit of time because I wanted to do a new sort of set. Because I've been doing the sort of thing that I've been doing, and most of my solo stuff now when I'm playing out, I think it's important to play in the world and not just stay in the studio. But I've been wanting to do something new for a long, long time, and I did the best job that I could, and I was getting into like doing a lot of sample of guitars. I'm trying,
cool.
Making
live looping or
no, I wasn't getting the live looping stuff, but my house, like having played in like doomy metal bands at times, like Melvins, like my favorite stuff from them has always been like the super slow Boris, the first side of Lysol, At the Stake, Joan of Arc, all of those sorts of songs. And I don't know, coming out of the pandemic, that felt really, really right. But also I've both feet in the electronic world. So it's like, how can I make doomy electronic stuff? So I started sampling guitars tuned down to like drop C. So really, really low. Civil War, Big Muff into a Rat,
Sure. Yeah.
And so I started sampling this, and how can I slow it down and use electronics?
Oh my God.
And
that's all sub information there, right? That's all you're pushing the subs.
Like if using samplers, like I always have a line out that's exclusively, it's not getting the subs from the guitars, it's actually written sub material so that way I can move it in and out.
Oh, okay, I see.
So it's composed sub bass, which is a very electronic idea,
Sure.
but then I'm using like granular synth on this. So, I'd still not, even before, as I was packing up, it's like, shoot, I don't have this down yet. But I took it to the Smell, I put it, and I played it over the PA, and it was a really, really great place to see sort of, I wouldn't say it was a failure, but I got more information about where I needed to go with it.
Yeah.
Now I know not to normalize the guitars before I put them out there. So there's a little bit more breathing and there's more dynamics to it. So it can really, so it can have a little bit more impending doom. And then I was running like this modular, like a smaller modular rack with it. And I couldn't believe how good like the raw electronics from the modular sounded, and how I needed to like work on like how I'm processing my samples. Anyways,
because
but it's like,
like you said,
and also what I consider, I might consider that might need more work. A lot of times people don't care; they're just having an experience that they have no idea what you're doing, and you play enough shows, like my friend Luke Jenner was saying, after some point, how to wiggle away. You're not going to have a bad show, know? Like, for me, a lot of times I'm more reliant on who's ever doing front of house at the place.
Yeah.
And, they're not using low cuts on the PA system. It's like, oh, take the low cut off. And so it's through experience, time put into it, how to like work your way through things. And, from being people that have or musicians that have played in bands and have done all that stuff, like onto like recording, engineering and production, we understand the language now that when we're working with people that do front of house, or we're working in other people's studios. We now can communicate in a clear and articulate way to someone that maybe doesn't have musical experience about what we're doing. Instead of, it's that whole thing, it's just like when we're recording something, like when we've gone to other people's studios and someone else is recording us, and, we're saying like, oh, it needs to sound more punchy or more, it's, something that's very abstract.
Turn up the wobble.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want to sound spacier. Like now we can explain, and we can I love working with other people still.
Well, the best thing in reference to that, I think that I can't believe I've made it to a point in my life where I just understand the limitations of what's possible and what's not possible. And I think as a performing musician, that's huge. I think I had this inherent dad complex with anybody who was doing front of house on the first, probably 5 years of No Age.
Yeah.
We're like, you can't tell me to turn down, Dad. I'm going to play my loud guitar. I had this thing, the poor guy has probably been up, for past midnight for the last, 3 months. And I'm just another asshole coming into his space who has no idea how big the space is or how the proper sound and what the PA can do and what this is. I'm just this punk kid with nothing, full of ego and excitement.
You had a lot of amps up there.
Yeah, no, and it was terrible. It was a terrible experience for everybody.
No, it was very powerful.
I had a lot to say. I was a very angry young man who had I wanted to tell the world a lot of things, but which I think was fine. But at the time, now that I've understood, I've gotten to a point where I just go, this is the room. You're playing in the room. I was playing the stadium and I was playing it in my mind.
Well, you're also playing with someone else on stage that doesn't have amplification.
I didn't care about it. No, I mean, it was, I know, well, it was like, I was very uninformed and frustrated because of myself, and nobody else was frustrating me. It was my own lack of understanding of the world, which I think is what a lot of young people face, whether you're in music or anything else in your life. You know what I mean? Like, why do I not have the $1 million job? Why do I not have this or that or this? And you just don't understand how the world works. The world's not fair, and the world's got a million little death by 1,000 cuts that happen to you at all points of being a young person coming into your own, am I in control of this? Is this my responsibility? Is this not my, all those things. So I learned how to keep my side of the stage workable, to understand what my responsibility was as the performing musician. And this is a tiny monitor. It can do X, Y, and Z, but it can't do all the things. But so what a good show will be is, it's in my head. I have to understand, oh, cool, for this size room with this size PA and this size monitor, this sounded really good. And this is the amp I brought for this reason. And this is not, I couldn't expect the venue to reset itself around me. I wasn't going to be like some larger, like Smashing Pumpkins, I remember, brought their own PA to Spaceland. And it's just, at the time, what an asshole. When in my head I go, that's probably the right thing to do. If you want it to sound the way you wanted it to, bring your own PA. That's what you have to do.
Well, yeah, I mean, I remember early days of No Age, you generally had more wattage of power than most PAs that you were playing.
I couldn't understand. This blew my mind. I'm a jerk driving around in a van, and how do I have more power than you guys have for your venue?
Yeah.
I was so mad at them. What's wrong with you? Why do you not have ear bleeding volume at all hours of the day?
A 45 watt amp with enough headroom. I mean, that's
beautiful.
Why super reverbs. My 64 super reverb is the perfect amp.
Yeah.
And I can do anything with that.
But it takes the understanding of that, of the experience of playing long enough to get to that point. And go, here's how to make it do what I want to do.
Well, it feels so good with so much power.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
I have the sports car. Why can't I drive 100 miles an hour down residential streets? It just doesn't make any sense. That's basically my mentality that I have, not understanding,
Well, you were just burying poor Dean. I mean, he's
like I said, I literally didn't care. I was up there for my own. I think I was having some sort of mental sort of processing of feeling, or I was having all of those early No Age things were very much me reckoning with my own internal turmoil at the time and trying to express it, which I thought was the job of the artist. I thought that's what I was being paid to do, or being commissioned to go out there and create this art that was expressing my internal state through external means. And that's kind of what I was feeling at the time. So, so there was some validity. I think I can understand that was my point of view, whether it was unclear to anyone else in the room who was just out there to have a good time and see a band.
It felt so right to you at the same time. Having all that power and that energy, it brings attention to people, and it feels loud guitars sound incredible, and it's hitting you in a
Oh my
like
God, I
visceral
love it.
way.
Yeah, it rearranged your molecules.
Yeah. And over time, I mean, there was a bunch of bands that came up post No Age that kind of didn't have that sort of power. That were still maybe, they're almost like bands that there were kids that were at your shows before they were in bands that started playing afterwards, but they just have one little amp up there, but they're still trying to play like sort of distorted, fuzzy, you know, like noisy pop songs.
Yeah.
And it did not have the wallop that it had because, without that, it might have been a different story and all. I mean, but you guys were always much more experimental and trying to push more envelopes than the stuff that I saw that came up after No Age.
Oh,
That's
nice. Well, from the beginning, you were there in those early days. Of like, what are we doing?
Well, I mean,
we had our little Behringer 4-channel mixers that we just thought was going to do something for us.
Yeah.
We had no idea. But I want to go back. So if we're going back. I first remember encountering you, and you will not remember this, but at The Smell in North Hollywood. I believe you were maybe in a large parka of some sort.
Still would love the parka.
With glasses, similar to you have now.
Still four-eyed.
Yeah. But you struck a very striking figure. I remember it must have been 98, I want to say, maybe thereabouts.
Yeah.
And I went to see Mike Watt play solo. And this was my first experience with The Smell.
Was that Outer Bass night? Where I was doing a series at The Smell at North Hollywood where there was 2 guitar nights.
Okay.
And everyone I booked 10 people, I think, each night.
Okay. Wow.
And everyone played 15-minute sets. And we did 2 guitar ones, and I remember Buzz played, Justin Trosper played, Nels Klein played, Bob Bruno. There was just a bunch of different people. And then the Outer Bass night, Devin Sarno and Mike Watt. But it was a bunch of different people because it was very much of the times. Like
it sounds right because I was a product of the suburbs out in the Inland Empire, and I knew what I could glean from major, media outlets like MTV and Rolling Stone and the LA Times and these kinds of things. I didn't have a particular line into an underground sort of experience personally. So I remember I liked Mike Watt. He had done his Ball Hog or Tugboat with other names that I knew, and that kind of understood what a Watt was. And then I went to Lollapalooza that Sonic Youth headlined. It would have been 94, 95, 94, I want to say maybe. And then maybe 95. But anyway, I saw him on the side stage with Nels Klein, the Flying Saucer, and I was just blown away. I loved everything about it. So there was like, in my mind, there was a straight line from Lollapalooza to then like seeing opening up. It was probably 2 years later, but opening up the LA Times and like Mike Watt's playing someplace in North Hollywood. I'm like, okay. And so I got my buddy who was playing in a band was like, we should just go. It sounds like a fun thing to see. And we went, and I just was completely blown away by the smell, by you, by Jim, by Ara, by Jarrett, everybody I saw there. That made such an impression on me. I think just sort of like burned in my head. I remember I was in a band with my friend that I took, and I was like, we could play here. And this was at like, must have been 17. And he was just like, no, we couldn't play. We're not that cool. I was like, but it immediately felt like, this is my people. I'm scared. I'm not comfortable in the sense that like, because it was, it was what it was, but I just felt very instantly like, this is a creative space that I want to be involved in.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Jim opened up a spot that was very, very open to, and very, very inclusive to help people feel empowered. And there's nothing like, and I was really blessed with that sort of gift too, where I could know of someone that was playing some sort of like huge venue and then see them at a place locally and even talk to them afterwards, having those sorts of experiences, because not a lot of people get that, and being maybe from Los Angeles and also being in an underground music community and scene, like if you're someone that's never your only access to music is going to see huge shows and the distance between someone performing and someone in the audience, it feels like something that you can't do. Like if you're, I remember when I started going to like see underground music shows, punk rock shows or whatever, and seeing people just walk around afterwards and talk to them. I liked their music, and then you could go talk to them, and they were like just regular people. And, you know, it just made me feel like, oh, wow, I can do this, and I can make these sorts of mistakes. And I had been playing in bands for a few years before you were.
Oh, yeah.
And so I had that sort of experience of like touring in vans, sleeping next to the cat boxes, talking to people, because it was so, doing that and having those sorts of experiences sort of demystified the process. And 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 being grateful to have those experiences and valuing it. That's why, you know, I've always tried to help people feel really, really empowered. And there's not like, because I've played in this band or this other band, and anyone that I've played in the band with, you know, are extremely down to earth and very, very cool people. And I mean that, like, you know, they don't place themselves above other people. It's just been time and the work that you've put into it, and having those sorts of failures, or not even failures, but no one caring for years and years and years. You know, that I try and like give back and all. Yeah.
Tell me, when did you first pick up an instrument? Like, what was your journey to music like?
Well, you know, I wanted to play in bands. I wanted to play music for a long time. I love music. It's something that I would put on headphones and just listen to and kind of zone out in the world. Like a
And
lot.
what kind of bands? What kind of music were we talking?
Let's see. You know, I had older friends that turned me on to things like David Bowie, The Who. What else did I really, really love? I guess it was basically kind of like classic rock, but, you know, I was around, you know, I liked music that sounded futuristic. I remember hearing Trans-Euro Express by Kraftwerk and hearing all those, you know, like those breaths and those like really syncopated like 808 hits. It was just like, this is like really, really mind-blowing to me. But I did not understand electronic music at all, and synthesizers were super expensive. So in high school, I eventually, on the same day, I got a cheap bass and a synthesizer.
What synthesizer?
JX3P.
Okay.
And, you know, it was like the least coveted Roland synth at the time. It didn't even have the programmer. And also, you know, I thought you had to play, with synthesizers, I thought you had to learn how to play piano, which some people
Doesn't
do.
hurt. Yeah. But
So I never really got very far with the synthesizer until very long, until later.
and where are you? You're in LA?
Yeah, I'm Sun Valley.
Sun Valley. Okay,
I'm
that's
in
where
a part of the valley
that's where you grew up.
That's where I grew
Okay.
up, and you know, nothing was happening in Sun Valley. I mean, you know, it was very, very removed from anything else going in Los Angeles. I mean, in this day, I mean, we're just a few miles from each other.
Yeah.
I'm 12 minutes away from you. And things have changed. There's actually, because Sun Valley is one of the only affordable places in Los Angeles you can live now. But there was something about playing bass. And my friend started picking up drums. And so in high school, you know, I took the bass over. And there was something about the bass that when he was playing drums, as long as I, you know, could come up with a rhythm that was really simple, you know, there was something more immediate about playing a stringed instrument, a physical instrument like that. Synths, you know, I couldn't play piano. You know, I didn't have the programmer for the JX3P. So I didn't touch that for years. But playing bass, it was like, oh, wow, we actually made a jam. Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, growing up, I had a mixture of like many different things that my older friends were listening to, whether it was Duran Duran or Black Sabbath or Pink Floyd. There was something about the Duran Duran bass lines that felt really kind of fun. You know, they were like punchy, and I came up with this like bass line that wasn't like on the, you know, just like dun 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 like. And I remember a friend going, just my friend going like, oh wow, you're a really good bass player. It wasn't a really great bass playing, but the fact that I wasn't playing, so it really took me, you know, I didn't think about synths for years. And then I wanted to start playing guitar. I got a very, very cheap guitar with like, the neck was bowed and like, you know, 3/4 of an inch off. Every time I looked at that guitar, it just looked like pain to me. And so when people ask me, it's like, oh, how do I start playing guitar? I'm like, just get a comfortable, a guitar, you put light strings on it, try and straighten the neck. Otherwise, when you see that guitar, it will just look like pain to you. You'll never want to pick it up. So after high school, I really wasn't even thinking about being in bands because playing in bands seemed like an impossible thing. I felt, you know, anything that I saw, I wasn't going to shows. I thought music just looked like a business to me. You had to have like things like managers, and you had to be incredibly good looking, and you had to do, it just seemed like an impossible thing. So after high school, I actually went to LACC to get into film studies, and then my friends opened up a club, and I started going to this club, and I started being around people that were playing music. And
what club is this?
Jabberjaw.
Okay.
And I was around bands like Hole who would practice there. And all of a sudden I was meeting different people. High school seemed really, really far away. Oh. And I was, you know, Hole were like 28. And they seemed ancient to me.
And you were at this point 19, 20 going to college?
Yeah.
Wow.
And
had you moved out and moved into LA proper, out of Sun
Valley?
No. Still living in Sun Valley, but just hanging. Going to college, going to Jabberjaw.
Yeah.
Union.
And then I started getting involved in the music scene in Los Angeles, dropped out of college because then I realized to make films, like I'd done my first couple of years and you were doing like 8mm films and moving to 16mm. To make a 16mm film, it would cost a whopping $500 to make. And,
oh, God, yeah.
And I'd seen this Jaguar in a pawn shop that was $600. And it was beautiful. It's 64. It had a blood red paint job on it. It was beautiful. And they were doing a half-off sale. And, I mean, to me, the band that changed my life, in addition to listening, like once I stepped away from like getting music from my older friends, I discovered Sonic Youth, and it changed my life. I cannot, I cannot give Sonic Youth enough credit for hearing music that it sounded like how I felt. Records like Evil, Bad Moon Rising, Confusion of Sex, Sister, all the way up into Daydream Nation, I still love Sonic Youth. I didn't listen to them for a number of years when I became a raver, but like Sonic Youth especially, I love Jimi Hendrix too, and some of my favorite things with Jimi Hendrix, things I loved about Jimi Hendrix was when he wasn't playing guitar and he was just getting feedback and he was manipulating the guitar, and I really, really loved like when he just the ambient things that he did on the guitar. Like Jimmy Plays Monterey, that record was incredible. So Sonic Youth to me sounded like all my favorite things about Jimi Hendrix.
It's so funny. I have such a similar, I was born in 81, so by 91, 92, when Nevermind came out, that was the right age. It was 5th grade going into 6th grade, just time for reinvention, going from elementary, little kid, MC Hammer and The Simpsons. Now there's this new thing called Nirvana. And we got a weird baby, but it's cool. Just keep listening to it. It's still that, they got the flannels and the jeans. And so it hit me at like a ton of bricks at 11 years old.
Yeah.
And so that was my first kind of like sea change. And then from there it was like, where do you go? I want to play guitar, but Jimi Hendrix, I was like, okay, but I like, this is weird. I like this. And I think Sonic Youth had probably come across at some point, but I didn't know how to hear it. It was like impossible. I couldn't hear it. I literally was like, I don't know what I'm listening to. And then I really liked Jimi Hendrix, but for those same sort of reasons. And I got a white on white, Squire as my first guitar. Like the Woodstock one. I even had my parents buy the Woodstock, tablature book. Like there'd be any way, this kid with his first guitar could play anything like, a Woodstock, live session of, the national anthem. But I liked all that stuff of it. And then I think that was kind of the key for me. And then we had a summer where my dad redid our roof. And at that point I had put, Goo on tape. I had it on tape. Then I just listened to it over and over and over. And it went from like, this is noise. This isn't anything. This isn't even a song. I couldn't just my brain. And then it somehow locked in around about like, I'm 12, 13. And then just that summer of just going up there and just like sweating and getting sunburned, like taking our roof off of our house.
Yeah.
Kind of unlocked Sonic Youth for me. And that was, again, another just complete like, just sea change in my life where I was like, okay, this is the rest of my life.
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
what I want to do. Well, I don't know if that's, but that's funny, the pathway from Hendrix to Sonic Youth.
I think it's funny that you said tablature too, because when I started discovering tablature, all the things I was interested wasn't in the tablature.
Right.
All of
the big
that
squiggly line that would go.
Yeah. Well, okay. I think with guitar, the three most significant influences, Sonic Youth was more than just guitar to me. It was Jimi Hendrix before I kind of got into like underground music. Yeah. Keith Richards, I remember one of the first things I discovered with tablature was learning how to play like Rolling Stones song. And that was a big breakthrough. I think it was like Brown Sugar, and he uses like an open tuning. And
did they transcribe it for standard tuning? Or
no.
They told you take the string off, do the thing.
Yeah. So I did that on a guitar, with the Pain guitar, and I did the bar chord, and then I did the what is the suspended chord. I was like dun 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 dun. And I was like, whoa. And that made me feel really, really empowered.
Wow. More so than a bar chord, than like a big chunky 2-finger.
With that guitar, it was impossible to feel.
Got it.
Like, I remember when I got my first good guitar.
What was it?
There was this place called Voltage Music, and I liked the way this guitar looked. Like, I'll make a list of the important guitar players to me, but. It was a Rickenbacker 330.
Ooh, okay.
And it was a whopping $600. I was working at Universal Studios in a place where they would take people's pictures and put them on magazine covers. So I worked there all summer.
Was that high school?
It was kind of like high school ended and I needed to get a job.
Was it your first job?
I'd done telemarketing in high school.
Okay.
Which is complete.
I did that too. I did telemarketing.
It's
for
so
mortgage,
brutal. It's so exploitive.
Mortgage, what do you call it? Refinancing your mortgage.
Yeah.
Were you good at it?
No.
Oh, I was good.
No. And I had a conscience about things too. It felt like I was doing something wrong, but you
had to get their social security numbers in order for them to run the credit.
I got my $40 a week if I was lucky doing that. And
I want to keep going, but sorry, I'll just jump in. My first job was at Disneyland when I was in high school, and Dean's first job was at Six Flags.
Oh.
So one of the many things that, of course, it all goes in. But so Universal Studios as an early job, I think it's sort of, this says something about us. I'm like, I want to be doing something there. What's the easiest access for a minimum wage to something in the entertainment industry?
Right. Well, it felt, it was that sort of stuff. It's available. And they were very flexible with schedules, and I could take the bus there. It was just, but still, it wasn't. The thing I like, the best part of that is I spent 8 hours. Like anyone that kind of, like I guess everyone had drug issues that worked at this place at Universal Studios. And, you could get away in the dark room and, spend your shift in the dark room.
How funny.
And, it's like we would just like be smoking weed, or some of us would be on acid.
Yeah.
There goes my presidency run.
Right. Well, you didn't need much of your brain to take somebody's photo and put it on Pamela Anderson's body, or I don't know who it would have been.
It was just really, really dumb stuff like that. Yeah. But, I worked that summer and, I bought a Rickenbacker, and I couldn't believe, oh, wow, the Rickenbacker feels really, really good.
Now, I don't know the numbers of Rickenbackers. Is this Paul Weller?
It's Paul Weller.
Okay.
I did like the Jam. I like the Smiths. And all those guys had that.
It's a multi-level thing. It's not the wood, but it's the pick guard, but there's like multi-level things of it. I always think of like the Tom Petty one was flat.
No, Tom Petty's one is a 360. Okay. That's the one that's more rounded.
Okay.
But the 330, it was like the cheaper version.
Okay.
And, to me, that was an incredible step up. But when I would play the things I really, really, like Johnny Marr, I could not figure out to save my life.
Oh, yeah.
And, but, I could play some Jam songs on it. But I didn't love that stuff as much as I loved Sonic Youth. And, I remember being in high school, and this is, the internet was very, very early on, if it even existed. I would take the bus to, what was it? The Burbank Library, which was just like a bus ride away from me. And you could go there, and it was like microfilm.
Oh, my God.
And so I'd look up in the archives like Sonic Youth and see what I could find. I found like old interviews from this must have been when they were doing like Bad Moon Rising. Like there was a blurb about new guitar music in like maybe one of those guitar player magazines.
Wow.
So it was like Elliott Sharp, Sonic Youth, Glenn Branca.
Mm-hmm.
Greg Ginn was even in this interview. So this is like new.
This was, yeah. Do you remember the cover is red and had them on the cover of it?
I don't know. I was just looking at the microfilm.
Oh, that's so funny.
You'd bring it up and read, and you could pay
Guitar Player Magazine, the new guitar school, or the new.
They were not on the cover at all.
Oh no, okay.
Like Sonic Youth, I think got on the cover after maybe. Well, after Nirvana got popular, or maybe it was.
I feel like it was right around the same time. It's fine. I have that issue. This is the one. But again, that's later.
This is when they were like a side issue on it
on SST probably.
It was like SST years before Daydream Nation.
Coverage, then they probably got somebody's probably Chuck or one of those guys writing on that.
Yeah, but I started reading about them, and everything they were talking about, you could pay 10 cents to take a photocopy of it from that. So I'd leave the Burbank airport with like 20 pages of like as much Sonic Youth information I could find.
Interviews, reviews, anything.
But the thing that was so important to me, it wasn't so much about guitar playing, but because culturally nothing was going on in Sun Valley. Yeah. But in Sonic Youth interviews, the other things that they were referencing was whether it was no wave.
Okay, yeah.
It's like, oh, what's this no wave stuff? And Stan Brakhage, who's an experimental filmmaker, or John Cage, or the beat poets and angry young men of England, more like writings. Everything that they were talking about
was a key. It was
a key. And then I remember going. There was record stores that I would take the bus to, or when I got a car, I'd go down to. Oh, I found the Teenage Jesus and the Jerks record. I found the DNA record at Aaron's Records. I would go to the classical music section, and I found it was classical music and other.
Okay.
I found like John Cage records. I found Morton Subotnick records. I found Stockhausen records. Wow. So I'd pick up all these things I was reading about Sonic Youth was like hip to.
The gateway.
They were totally the gateway. And so they were instrumental to getting away from like my peer group and discovering more about things that I didn't have access to otherwise. And, then you start going to like underground film screenings. You start going to, shows that it would have like Watt playing at this little music shop. And you start reading about things like the Meat Puppets or
this is all pre-Nirvana or just
pre-Nirvana.
Right, okay.
Yeah. I'm from the generation where like first wave punk rock had ended. You know, Black Flag hadn't been a band for years, but kind of coming up where I was still seeing like cool underground music. And then it, you know, went into the suburbs and people called it like alt rock or grunge and
college
stuff.
Radio.
College
radio.
Well, I think college radio existed, but I didn't really vibe with the REM stuff.
Right. But that was a name for before it was alternative, it was college radio.
It was college radio. Yeah. But I always liked the rougher edge stuff, like Sonic Youth.
Yeah.
And I liked a couple of Dinosaur songs, you know, Big Black.
Oh, yeah. But
I didn't like
Nirvana?
the tuneful song. I did not like the tuneful stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I guess the most tuneful stuff, I didn't like Husker Du. It was too sing-songy. And the saving grace for Dinosaur for me was just like the noise sections.
Yeah.
And because I was in like a guitar solo sort of person.
Yeah.
But Sonic Youth just felt like who I was. And we should talk about like how significant their approach was to guitar at some point. Yeah. But okay, wait. Where?
Oh no! When did you see Nirvana? That's what I wanted to know. You were about to say.
Okay, so I saw Nirvana because I went to the Hollywood Palladium to see the Goo tour because I'd seen Sonic Youth once before that. It was the Daydream Nation tour because I was too young to go see them before that.
Yeah. And
I was still like probably the youngest person in the audience. Daydream Nation tour, and it was, so I went to go see them on the Goo tour. Nirvana was opening up, and it was SCP, Julie K. Fritz band, not Stone Temple Pilots. Right. And Dale Crover was playing drums, who I was not even hip to the Melvins at that point. And Nirvana was like, I don't remember even watching their full set. I just could not wait for Sonic Youth. Stood on Lee Ronaldo's side of the stage. You know, he had a super reverb with the Jasper Johns target on it. Yep. And, Goo had sounded different to me than the stuff that, like, I didn't really get Cool Thing.
Right.
And I didn't...
Well, that was the major label debut, right?
I hate to be that guy, like, you know...
But it was. Well, they seem to make... I mean, I have the tape.
I think Bull and the Heather is their best single. Like,
interesting.
Like that
in terms
song,
of radio play or that the major label push.
Right. And what they brought, like... How many other songs are as distant as Bull and the Heather with those, like... what do you call it? The
harmonics, pinch harmonics, or pinch, or no?
They didn't need pinch harmonics because if you're tuning a G to a G sharp, you know,
right, yeah,
you don't need to get into Billy Gibbons pinch harmonics with that. But yeah, I mean, it was cool, but I started seeing bands more from the underground at that point. You know, another big change for me was when I saw Unwound. Like after Sonic Youth, you know, my friend Brian Gerges started bringing Kill Rock Star bands and to my friend's club.
To Jabberjaw.
Yeah. And, you know, when I heard Unwound, that was another band that sounded like how I felt. I remember hearing the first Unwound record, you know, at Jabberjaw when we were cleaning up, and the last few songs on the first side of the record was like, oh my God, this feels like me.
Wow.
And that kind of changed. It's because there was all these bands that were kind of coming up that everyone's like, oh, if you like Sonic Youth, you'll like Drive Like Jehu. And I saw Drive Like Jehu, and it was still a little bit too driving, and it felt kind of jockey to me. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like Rocket from the Crypt or anything, but it just wasn't the right fit for me. And then I found that in Unwound. And, you know, and that took me down the road for people that were like my age that were making music. Because Sonic Youth, they were like a decade, if not more, older than me. And, with that, it opened up on what, I started making friends with people that were in my peer group that were generationally my age, and became friends with the Unwound, Godhead Silos, Carp, Antioch Arrow, Click Attack, Atawi, some of the Discord people like the Ulysses and Makeup people. So I was meeting people that were my age. I gotta say, like Eric Erlandson from Hole, and this is years before Courtney and Kurt had got together. And also, I have no idea what kind of person Courtney is today, but she was really kind of like fun, lovely, and it helped me feel empowered. Like I was certainly not like some sort of cool person, but because she practiced at my friend's place, I was around her a lot. And she, I know her to be kind of lovely and encouraging towards me to play music. But I really got closer with Eric. Eric was the only person that I knew that was listening to the music that I loved. And, he seemed like he's from the Sonic Youth generation. And I'm actually better friends with Eric these days than I was back then, because he was just doing something kind of cool. I was looking up to him. But, I stayed very dedicated to guitar playing and making music, and I had a bunch of experiences. But anyways,
Yeah, it's a lot. I know.
Maybe the way you felt about me, which seems mind-boggling to me. Maybe I felt about Eric.
Yeah, makes sense.
But
I think it's important to sort of, especially at this, at this stage in your life, or at any stage, but just to understand, to sort of just be like, there was people that were doing things that you wanted to do, but didn't know how to do them. You know what I mean? It's a very, I think in a filmic kind of way, you need your Obi-Wan to sort of set you on some path, whether they're giving you advice or not, but just seeing somebody like they have what I want, like we've seen in, different things in life, like stick around the people that are doing what you want to do or being who you want to be. And you'll start to learn what does it take, or how do you do that?
Well, it takes openness and some sort of humility, but also some sort of like genuine interest for, music is a very spiritual thing to me, and not to sound all new agey. But, you're not doing it superficially. Like a lot of people that I know that played music that don't play music anymore, they were listening to whatever was popular at the time. And Los Angeles is a cesspool for people that hear something cool and then all of a sudden put on that outfit or get that haircut and then become it. And the tradition goes as far back as, Devo and Oingo Boingo,
Oh, sure.
or
New wave.
Blondie and Berlin. And, I saw all these other bands that were like Jabberjaw. All of a sudden, when underground music started becoming cool, dudes that used to be in like the hair metal scene a few years later,
God.
all of a sudden were wearing white belts and had bowl cuts. And
which is interesting because it was still very fashionable. Those are still very bold choices. I thought you were going to say they had little soul patches and flannels on, but no, it wasn't.
There was no soul patches at Jabberjaw. Soul, yeah. I mean,
the irony of it. I guess that's another 5-10 years later. I did want to. Where is my brain going with this? Oh, just in terms of your CV or your oeuvre, you've played in many bands, but I never really think of you as a session musician. I mean, can you speak to sort of just how you got involved in you don't have to, you can be non-specific, but just how did you find yourself kind of shifting from band to band and project to project like that? Or what was your experience like with that?
Well, it all stems from being a part of a community and being a part of being a contributing member of that. putting on shows, supporting other people playing, going to shows, you know, having your own band, and also having your own path and all. Like, you know, when I realized how, going back to like Sonic Youth, you needed a lot of guitars to sound like Sonic Youth, and also you needed another person that you could like intuitively play off of. And I didn't really have that. So I got really obsessed with guitar effects pedals. And I was playing in this band Slug when their bass player, like I was playing bass in Slug. And then Slug, it was almost with the tube, it didn't sound just like straight up bass. I was playing a lot of distortion pedals, a lot of other effects pedals, because I was obsessed with like the processing of like guitars and basses. So I was, you know, I'd drive out to Riverside to pick up, you know, a frequency analyzer for $40, electroharmonics ring modulator, or, you know, drive out to Claremont to, you know, get a Fox tone machine, because those things were really cheap. And so
this was all in the back of the recycler.
Yeah, it was back in the recycler. You know, every Thursday I get in, look under like effects pedals, look for like certain brands. And so when I was playing these instruments, I was getting all these different sounds out of it. I was trying to misuse them. I started thinking about, okay, if I have a reverb pedal, what happens if I put the reverb before the distortion? You know, which, you know, everyone will tell you is wrong. And, you know, without good wet and dry control, you know, like
there's no right or wrong. There's an effect.
But a lot of people did not. A lot of people weren't like experimenting with it.
Yeah.
When I started playing in Get Hustle, I started putting my effects pedals on a music stand, had an AB box and a looper. So when I could loop different sections and actually play the effects with the guitar as the
tone generator.
Yeah. And that was I'd not seen anyone doing it, and to me that was just out of necessity, because I was always on my knees, like twisting knobs and all. So to this day, I still have not seen too many people do that, and it just made sense to me. And so when I was traveling, I was playing Get Hustle, that became a really big part of like my approach to it. And Buzz, because his wife had been in Get Hustle early on, and, you know.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. She was the first bass player of the band. She introduced me to Mac. Yeah, no, I knew Mac and Maximilian from Antioch Arrow.
What a drummer.
Oh, Maximilian? Yeah. He was a great he is a great drummer. But so Buzz saw me do this. And that was a big shift. Buzz asked me to play in the Melvins, and I was like, wait, what? I'd gone up for Y2K to go see the Melvins. The next day, Buzz Mackey and I went to Alcatraz. On the way back out of the Blue, he asked me if I'd be up for playing in the Melvins. I was at this point, I'd seen the Melvins, because Buzz had moved to LA in the early 90s. I became friends with him. He was another mentor to me. Buzz turned me on to bands like Gang of Four, the second record, Solid Gold. He turned me on to ZZ Top. He basically showed me ZZ Top as like an art rock band that used just blues rock as their medium. You know, PIL, the Wipers. So Buzz was absolutely mentored to me directly. And, you know, for him to ask me to play in the band, I was like, I can't play those crazy riffs. He was like, no, you don't have to. I could get someone else to, and his whole thing was just like, yeah, I could get someone to play like me pretty easily, but I'm not looking for someone to play like me. I want you to do what you do and bring more noise into it. Because in addition to guitar stuff, I was into like harsh noise, tabletop, power electronics, all of that stuff.
So you weren't playing, he wasn't asking you to come in and play bass. for the
No,
Melvins.
I
You were
played
playing
bass.
kind of fourth member sort of noise.
Noise guitar.
Okay, got it.
And because he likes challenging people. And also he liked the idea like I look completely wrong in the Melvins. So
Who was playing bass at that point?
Kevin.
Okay.
Kevin Romandis was the bass player. Kevin had just joined the band.
So it was
Mark
kind of
had
a
left the
reinvention
band.
for them.
They had just done the Trilogy records with Tim Green engineering and producing those records at his place. And so we were doing a tour we were doing two sets, a quiet set and a loud set. It was called the 2x4 tour.
Okay.
So I was creating a lot of extra sounds, and Buzz gave me pretty much free rein to go with my instincts. If there was something that he was looking for, he would say that, but I could kind of do whatever I wanted.
And was it improvisational mostly, or was it sort of
No, I
like
kind of came up with sort of like these
spaces?
things that I felt like he let me go with my instincts about what needed to happen. And of course, if he was going to do a guitar solo, I would want to back it up. And sometimes it sounded really like my instincts were also to be supportive and double up the guitar solos. And I mean, sometimes he had, direction for me, but a lot of times I got to do whatever I wanted. For someone like Buzz that trusted me to do these sorts of things. I mean, what a gift that was.
Yeah, and what a stage or platform to be on
Yeah,
at that time
yeah.
too. Sort of that stamp of validation, like you're talking, it's like, oh yeah, this is the guy.
Yeah.
This is,
I mean, I got to do Melvins taught me such a solid work ethic. Like we practiced 6 days a week. We would at least go through the set, which was a 2-hour set, 2+ hour set,
Wow.
before we learned new material. I mean, and we did a 2-month tour. My first tour with him was 2 months, a figure eight of North America, going through the States, all across Canada. I mean, they took me to Europe for the first time. Doing touring with that. We did Phantom Os Melvin's big band. I'd played a lot of shows with them. And then they were going, Buzz wanted to change things up. And then after that, Justin asked me to play on Unwound because they just recorded Leaves Turn Inside You. Justin wanted another guitar player. And so I played at Unwound right after the Melvins. I went from my last Melvins tour to playing for 3 months later, going up to Olympia and playing on Leaves and Turn Inside You tour. And again, I got to do a lot of things. I mean, I think it's a combination of being respectful to the material and also having an approach to, like, I wanted to get the sounds that Justin couldn't do, but figure out, like, I figured out I had a better idea of how to recreate the synth with my guitar that I could kind of get in that sort of thing. And I loved Unwound. I loved the Melvins too. And I've probably still seen the Melvins more than any other band. I'd spent a lot of time with Unwound, and actually the last Melvins tour I did, Justin jumped in the van and he was doing merch for it. And I mean, it's, so I went up to Olympia, we learned the Unwound set, and then we went on tour in late August of 2001. And guess what happened on September? A few weeks into that tour, we were
this is with Unwound.
Unwound was supposed to play, I think, in New York, September 12th or 13th, 2001.
God. So you were
On September 11th, we had a show planned at the Middle East with Arab on Radar.
Oh no!
On September 11th,
in Boston,
2001.
Wow.
So the world shifted. The complete, all of our lives changed. so on that tour, I mean, I loved playing in Unwound. I mean, it was playing music that was closer to my heart. And I mean, I love those people. And Vern was a very, very close friend to me. It's still weird to talk about. And I saw Unwound play recently. They were amazing. Like Jared is so good in the band. Hearing those songs again, it's I can't wait to see this new, like, I think Unwound now, I'm seeing them in ways I hadn't seen before, and I hear them in different ways, and I can't wait to hear new stuff from them. Jared, who also is a dear friend to me, like, his bass playing is incredible. It's so, he gets, I mean, Vern kind of taught him how to play bass. He's the only person that legitimately could have done that. I mean, they were friends growing up. Justin and Sarah sound better than ever. The guy who's playing with them had been plays guitar with them. He's been playing in Justin's bands for a number of years. They're locked in, like. But anyways, yeah. It's like there are like things that come out of like really, really tough situations. And, but yeah, like, I mean, being with them in a world-changing event, we have very, very deep ties,
Wow. Yeah.
But, I think it's just being committed, wanting to approach any sort of band situation as a way to be of service with my niche skill set, maybe my dedication to playing instruments. I would say, I'm pretty reliable,
Incredible. Well, I think we've covered more than I thought we'd get into. This is incredible. We're definitely there's about 18 more hours of this conversation that could continue to happen.
Yeah, we
I'm
didn't
sure
even get
will
the
happen
sense.
over. I'm sure. Yeah, we could do a part 14 of this. Maybe this will become a monthly check-in.
Yeah. I mean, it's
If I think of a hyphenate, like what if you look up the definition of what a multi-hyphenate is, I think David Scott Stone. Even your name has multi-hyphenates in it.
There's no hyphens in it. But
I'm just saying there's many, you're a man of many hats, kind of a Renaissance man in that regard of, we didn't even get into all the production work, the recording engineering,
it's like basically the shorthand of it is, with guitar work, you get into, sound design with guitar. My friend said, the way I use effects pedals like a modular synth. What's a modular synth? I started building a modular synth system. From there, it took me into a bunch of, and then the energy of things that were coming out post 9/11, seeing No Age and Mika Miko and Abe Vigoda, and loving bands like The Liars, who were another sort of shift to me. Like, and then that leads me to doing some, from there, played in Locust, and then a few years after that, played guitar in LCD Sound System. It's all like a thread of continuity there.
Yeah. But what a life! I mean, it's in some
quitting
moments,
drinking, that was
huge.
A huge thing.
Yeah.
Anyways, enough of my ramble.
This is the ramble. This is the Randy Ramble show. This is it. No, it's good. Well, thank you for taking the time and sitting down. And like I said, there's you've been a huge inspiration to me personally on many levels, and artistically and creatively. Like, we didn't even get into the early No Age stuff. We sat when Dean and I first sat down and go, what is No Age? We didn't have the confidence to think it was just that us two knuckleheads could do it, because we certainly didn't know what we were doing.
Well,
and you were nice enough to come in and jam with us, and we figured like, is this the band? And we honestly we felt too insecure to have somebody as professional as you in the band.
Well,
we thought we were really young and kind of stupid, and we felt a little shy around you, I think, and it was hard.
Well,
for us because
I remember
we respected you too much.
Well, we did that one song together
to make you play our dumb music.
No,
Yeah,
we did that one. Wait,
great song. It was on the 7-inch.
It was on a 7-inch, or maybe it was on the 12-inch.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I always felt it's funny because I felt like, I really your band meant a lot to me. Seeing it, I genuinely felt like you were spearheading a movement. As corny as that sounds, I really, really felt like, wow, there's a paradigm shift in Los Angeles. All this other stuff that in LA didn't feel cool to me. And I mean, not just cool because of looks or anything, but just it felt like you were changing people's lives. I will tell this one story that I remember seeing happen.
Yeah.
And also it's funny because I felt like things were shifting pretty quickly, and I wasn't cool enough for you guys at one point. But I remember, okay, you guys, things happened for you very, very quickly. A lot of people took a lot of interest in you. I remember you going to Japan very, very early. And I could feel you guys being overwhelmed and all. And you just gone back from Japan, and I don't know if you realize this, but kind of like the hit was Everybody's Down.
Okay.
Sure. That's fair to say. That's the one that really got everyone going. Came back from Japan. I was watching you guys play Packed at the Smell, and you're doing
the one riff song, yeah.
Yeah. But you bent it, and to me it almost sounded like a koto sort of bend.
Oh.
And, and something came to my head. It was like, oh, well, he just got back to Japan. Maybe Randy's bringing some koto influence from the impression of going to Japan. And I remember when you did it, I might have been looking at the Protect Me guys or people around there. And at that moment, when you're doing the sort of bend thing that you'd not done before.
Oh, interesting.
I felt that you had all of a sudden taken everyone that had come to see your band and had been following you for a while. For that moment, you took them to Japan for that one moment. You shared that sort of impressionistic experience with them. It was a really, really cool moment. And because, I felt that experience when all of a sudden you're doing something after kind of because I saw the Wives before. Mm-hmm. And also, by the way, you had the second most abrasive guitar sound next to Airborne Radar in the Wives. That was different than No Age and all.
Yeah.
But I remember it was whoa, this is a magic moment. So Dean and Randy are having all these experiences. All of a sudden life's getting fast and busy for them. They just get back from Japan. They're taking on these sorts of life experiences, bringing it in subtly into their lives. And they're taking everyone else on this sort of trip too. You were in the best possible way, Pied Pipers. You know what I mean?
I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, because you're in the middle of it.
Yeah.
But for someone that kind of overthinks things and kind of is looking for the meaning in everything, it was really, really cool. I mean, we cannot undervalue that really, really cool time period, mid-aughts. What was happening with the Smell, what was crossing over things like family books, a bunch of art, music, creativity, just all firing each other up. It was really, really a special time. And maybe we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
The aughts in the future.
Oh my God, right? It's coming up 20 years, 2004 was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Things got better. Quite honestly, that was, things got when I tell stories about Jabberjaw, that was really, really, things felt better for me. Those experiences, there were better times for me. Jabberjaw, I don't really like talking about much because it was very, very dark. It was I saw every cool band. I got to be a part of, sing in front of, and when I say cool band, I
Yeah.
mean like, oh yeah, seeing Jesus Lizard in front of 40 people, or Helmet in front of less than 100, or Bikini Kill's first show in LA, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
There was like cool shows. And, but it was a difficult time period in my life, and the smell felt much freer and more innocent and more aligned with my values that maybe I didn't have a definition of. So it felt more like
Yeah.
home to me,
Oh,
you
that's
know?
amazing.
Yeah. And you were a part of it. And
Oh,
you're,
man.
and, I mean, you know, and I felt very welcome. And I got to do my like weird modular, like you guys had me
great.
open, like play with you all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And it's funny, like that your experience was different than mine because you guys were coming up and I was like, oh, all of a sudden, oh, those guys are now too cool for me. You know,
No,
like,
I hope we never came off like that. I
well,
think
you know,
the hope was always to champion everything that was going on around us and sort of like, I think in some ways literally bring our friends with us, you know, like an Abe Vigoda or like a Mika Miko and all these things. Like if we were to get any attention, my first instinct was to deflect it and sort of just show like, we come from a place. We were not born out of an egg. You know, like this is a scene, a very creative, vibrant scene, and to try to spread that tension around as much as possible.
You very much did.
I've talked to people and since then, and some people said that maybe that wasn't a good thing. Maybe I put too much light, or we as a band put too much light on a very fragile scene that maybe did not need or want
what do you mean?
so much
What,
light, so much attention. You know, just from
what's
a sense.
fragile to you mean?
Well,
and what's the context?
I've been told this. This was not my thought. Everybody wanted to. I thought many people had the same ambition as I did to be able to monetize their art. You know what I mean? And maybe that wasn't always everybody's intention. And I don't think I was old enough or mature enough to understand that. So in some ways where I would say, hey, do you guys want to play this show? Or do you, this so-and-so, you know, this will help bring more people to this mill. Wouldn't that be great if the mill was sold out every night? And that's not necessarily the case. You know, it seemed unusual to me. I'm like, wow, okay.
Well, things had shifted.
And it's fine. And not that it needed it. And I think I understood, it wasn't like, oh, this is a bad night, it's not sold out. But that kind of feeling of like, well, wouldn't it be better if there was more people here? And sometimes, you know, that much attention on such a small sort of corner of the world of very sensitive people that are making very personal music didn't need an A&R person coming down to see their band. You know what I mean? In that kind of way that maybe, not that we intentionally did that, but in that kind of way to like put pressure on people to have to succeed. Like, oh, look, these guys are doing it. If I don't do what they did, then I'm not as successful in this thing. And it devalues their art. And it was not my intention, but it's been brought up to me in the many years since, or just recently. And I had to really kind of take that with a grain of salt and understand like, oh, okay. And maybe I can apologize for that. If that was the
there's
effect.
a paradigm shift going on. And like within the first 6 months of No Age happening, and this is what I witnessed, there would be more people at your shows that I'd seen than when the band like Jesus Lizard was playing Los Angeles, when their first couple of shows. Things had changed where you could be in a band, like from the 90s, a band like Jesus Lizard or John Spencer Blues Explosion, like a touch-and-go size band.
Yeah.
They could tour and buy houses from that. Things had shifted post-download world.
Oh, God.
And bands had to think about different ways of doing things, you know, and you and Dean felt like new generational energy, which was really, really exciting. You weren't just playing songs, like you were designing T-shirts, you were making your own videos, you were working on all aspects of the creative process that, you know, bands in the past, you know, it's like, you know, Tar, you know, they just write a song, then Steve Albini recorded it. You know what I mean? Like, you guys were like designing T-shirts and you were creating community. And I'd not seen that in Los Angeles. I'd been waiting for that for a long time. A band that was actually creating community and trying to like help other bands, lift everybody up. And, you know, it's like, let's think about the bands. No Age, and these are the bands I put together from the scene that were very, very primary. No Age, Mika Miko, Vigoda, Health, the Meishi, Hello Astronaut, Goodbye wait.
Yeah, Goodbye Television.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love them.
Like there was a bunch of bands that were doing exciting. Bar was a part of it.
Oh yeah.
Like Dean was curating on PPM, like he was documenting a time and an energy. Family Books was very much a part of this. So it was a change that needed to happen. That the smell, in conjunction with No Age, was very, very instrumental in creating. Because outside of that, you have like Chorus Club, you have like the sort of bands that were like,
the Silver Lake Lounge.
Yeah, and that was like a gross scene. That wasn't, I appreciate the refreshing air. Like the smell was what I was waiting for to happen.
Awesome. Okay, what was a good place to stop? All right, there he is. That is my talk with Mr. Dave Scott Stone. I'm such a corn dog. I totally biffed the audio on that. I don't know. Little Dave, we'll have to do it again. Let's do it. Let's do another one. Yeah, I was nervous. It's a funny one. You talk to somebody you've known for so long, but never really have like a conversation about all the parts of your life and the different aspects of someone's, overall. I think we usually talk about guitars or pedals or bands or something else. We just talk about all like the silly stuff and then getting into like life things. It's like, whoa, man, it's it can all be overwhelming. I think I yeah. Totally got lost in it. I think it's also the being in the person thing. So I'm getting better, little by little. We recorded this a while back as well. And, well, I appreciate it, Dave. Thank you so much for putting up with my lack of professionalism in this podcasting world and helping me to learn how to do it better along the way. Like everything, you've always helped me become better at whatever it is I try to do, Dave. I really appreciate it. You've always been there for me as a mentor, as a guiding figure, telling me how to do, showing by example how to be more professional, how to do things better. So I appreciate that, Dave. Everybody go follow Dave on the Instagrams. His handle is at SirDSS, SIRDSS. And there it's a good place you can keep up with all of his projects and everything he's up to. All right. See you on the next one.